mic, camera, action.
Okay in here?
Mel, check this out.
What about it?
It's pretty solid. One way in, a back door out, leading to the rear entrance. And a good sturdy door.
So what's your point?
It's rather cozy. Don't you think?
I don't believe this. You lured me back here to seduce me?
Yeah, well, the way things are going, I thought this might be our last chance to dance.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film from an actor's complete back catalogue, from past debut through to present day, in chronological order. Each episode, I'm joined by an esteemed guest to watch and discuss the next entry from the focused filmography and consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. For episode 4, I'm joined by the introduction idol, the herald of hype, the mandatory man of comics and motion, Max Byrne, to discuss the fourth appearance of the Stath in John Carpenter's repurposed Snake Plissken threequel, Ghosts of Mars. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. So, Maximus Introductorius Marvelous, thank you so much for coming on the show to discuss this mindless motherfucker of a film.
Oh, Jack, thanks so much for having me on. I'm absolutely delighted. A huge fan of the Stath, huge fan of yours. So combine the two and you've got a recipe for success. So I'm very happy to be here. Very happy.
I totally appreciate that. You know, I always take those kind words, but also, coming on for this film perhaps is, I know you were quite keen, which is great. This was one of the ones that didn't get a lot of people initially putting their hands up when I put the list out. So, and actually was one of the few I hadn't seen. When I went through the list, he's currently got 41 films on release. There was 4 I hadn't seen, and this was one of them. So, again, take from that what you will. But you had seen it and were somewhat of a fan?
Yeah, I saw this in the cinemas when it came out. Now, bear in mind, in 2001, I actually worked in the local cinema in the box office. So got in to see everything for free whenever I wanted. So my tastes weren't so discerning in terms of, like, now you only go to cinema if it's something you really want to go and see. Whereas back then it was like, screw it, I'll go and watch it, whatever, I don't care. So perhaps if I'd have been in the situation I'm in now, my sort of eagerness to go and see it might not be quite as white hot as it was back then. But I mean, at the time, obviously, I was a huge fan of John Carpenter. This is one of his last, it sounds crazy because it's a 21-year-old film, but it was one of his last major directorial outputs, really, wasn't it? So, it was not the greatest way for him to sort of end his, what at that point been an extremely illustrious career. But I do have a soft spot for this film. Despite its many flaws, which I'm sure we'll get into a great length, it's got a lot going for it, if not just for the man himself, Mr. Statham, but it's something I have like a semi-guilty pleasure thing going on with it, I'd say. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Carpenter was definitely on his downside at this point, wasn't he? And then it was 10 years, I think, after this till he made The Ward with Amber Heard, who's obviously very current at the moment for reasons we won't go into. And then there was nothing after that. So, yeah, it's a bit of an ignominious end for a man who just made some absolutely all-time classics, unfortunately.
It is really, yeah. And and obviously this film really didn't do well, did it? It was,
No.
I mean, I was reading before it cost $28 million to make, and its box office was 14, so it literally only made half its budget back, which is, in any parlance, that's a flop of a film, isn't it? So it's a shame. It's a shame, but I think it's kind of found a bit of an audience in the 20 years since. I mean, he continues to have a big fan base, doesn't he? Out there, he's an icon of cinema, of genre cinema. So there'll always be people watching this film, but whether there'll always be people enjoying this film is another question. Is another matter altogether, I'd say.
It's definitely considered a cult classic now. I would say. I think you get that voracious fan base who want to defend it and extol its virtues. And I know Carpenter felt like it was misunderstood himself. He felt like he was aiming for camp cult classic type movie, but because he'd been renowned for The Thing and Halloween and straight serious horror, I suppose, he felt like it was misunderstood.
Yeah, you can see why, can't you? It's one. Sometimes you watch this film and you think, are they being serious here? Are they taking the piss? And then when you think, yeah, perhaps they are. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think he was sort of found himself caught between two stalls, wasn't he? Really, what people wanted from him and what he was actually serving up here, the two didn't quite mesh, did they?
Definitely not. And it watches confused, I think. I'm not sure he was quite sure what he wanted either. He might be, he can come up now and say that that's what he was aiming for, but I'm not sure he had that clear vision myself personally.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you on that, because like you said at the top there of the show, this was originally going to be Escape from wherever, Escape from
Mars,
York,
I assume.
LA, Escape from Mars, and was going to be a third Snake Plissken, Kurt Russell adventure, and then that kind of got repurposed into what we have. Whether or whether not that's true, who can say? But I think it would have been interesting, wouldn't it, to see how different it would have been. One would presume Snake was the Desolation Williams Ice Cube character, wouldn't you? And how that would have played out with him in that role. I don't know. Interesting.
I mean, we'll probably get into Ice Cube, and let's say he's no Kurt Russell. Let's put a pin in that for now. We'll come back to it. But it's also interesting because the Stath was initially cast as Desolation, I believe, and then there was pushback because he didn't have enough star power at this point, which I can understand from a producer's point of view. It's only his fourth movie, and at this point, Turn It Up, which was the previous, that had been a flop as well. Obviously, Snatch had done well, but he didn't have proven talent in this arena yet. So I can see why there was pushback. But even he, I think he would have brought a bit more to the role than I think Ice Cube does too. Yeah,
I think he's a better screen presence than Ice Cube. There's no question. I mean, I'm not knocking Ice Cube. He's done some good stuff over the years. A very one-dimensional actor, but what he does quite well. And like you said, you can perfectly understand why they made that decision, because his star in 2001 compared to Jason Statham's was obviously a lot higher. And so you understand it's crazy to say it now, isn't it? When you think about it. If you're making an action film now and you're offered Jason Statham or you're offered Ice Cube, you're going with the Stath every time, aren't you? There's no comparison now. Now he is a bona fide Hollywood leading man, but obviously, like you said, back then he had very little on his CV. So it's bonkers. But I would have, in an alternate, multiverse, the multiverse is quite in at the minute, in that sort of parallel multiverse, I would have liked to have seen him run with this part and see what he could do. And Ice Cube could have played his part in this film, that kind of macho cop, with a very, I'm sure we'll get to as well, a very leery side.
Yeah, easily. And I think it is a shame. And I think, as you said, in that alternate world where the Stath gets the part and is cast and, he gets followed through, I think it would have been a better film, because I think he can do that balance between straight action man, which Ice Cube can kind of do. I think I'm probably less generous than you are towards his acting ability, if I'm honest. But also Stath can do the campy, he can do the comedy. He can do that. Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. He can do the Rowdy Roddy Piper. I can't remember his character's name. In They Live, like he could pull that off much better.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. He's got a lot. Again, people like to say Jason Statham's sort of acting range sort of starts there and ends there. there's not a lot. There's not a lot to it. But like you said, I think he has got quite a few strings to his bow. His comedic side, a film which I know obviously will be in a much further down the road in your sort of chronological journey. Spy, where it's an out and out comedy, and he's superb in that. His one liners, his delivery, spot on. And then moving into even a film like Hobbs and Shaw, which is this stupid macho action spectacular, which I absolutely love, by the way. But in that, the comedy, his comedic timing in that is superb. His interplay with The Rock, it's great. So, again, just he is a million times better than Ice Cube. Granted, Ice Cube's a better rapper, I'll give him that. But that said, I've never heard Jason Statham rap. Have you?
I haven't, no.
Exactly. Who can say? If it's as good as his dancing, then,
wow.
Maybe exactly, yeah. If NWA decide to reform it, and they're a member down, just get stay then, it could be a bit. but yeah, it's a shame that he wasn't trusted with the lead, but it is what it is, isn't it?
It is. So cycling back a little bit, something I always like to ask my guests is how many Stath films they think they've seen. So as I said, 41 so far. We're going to get 42 at least during my process of doing this, if not 43, if Expendables 4 comes out in time before I finish. But we're going to get his next Guy Ritchie collaboration, aren't we? Operation something. That'll be out.
Oh, yes.
Film 42 later this year. But how many do you reckon he's in at this point if he's got 41?
Right. Well, I was looking at this afternoon at work on my lunch. I was looking at his filmography from start to finish. And I think out of those, there's maybe 10 or 11 that I haven't seen. So obviously nowhere near on your level of Stath worship. But granted, there's a couple that I hadn't heard of, like 13, was it? I'd literally never have heard of that film, and I trust you've seen it, but
I have. That's one I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a few on there I haven't seen, but I aim to rectify that. But I do like him. He's a very watchable screen presence, isn't he? He's almost a throwback in a lot of ways with his on-screen persona, isn't he? That sort of macho action man. But I do think he has a lot more depth than some of those guys of yesteryear. So he is a very good presence, and I've never watched a film and not enjoyed him in it. Even the films he's done that are absolutely shit. I do think he brings something to the table every time. He's a very watchable screen presence, isn't he?
Yeah, 100%. And I think what you said there about the fact that you've gone out your way to see 31 of his films says a lot, doesn't it, about like his watchability?
Yeah,
and I think he does. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think you're the first person I've had that has posited this argument, and I'm on your side, where he does have a bit more range than the majority would like to award him with, I suppose. It's still not. It's never going to be the next De Niro, is he? He's never going to be the next Joaquin Phoenix or whoever you want to pick, DiCaprio. These people who are elite. But I think within what he can do, hopefully, this over the next 18 months will prove that there is some fluidity to his ability and what he can bring to the screen. And yeah, 100%, always watchable. As you said, even in the shit films, you're drawn to Statham. And I think you even were right from the start of his career. When I went back and watched Lock, Stock and Snatch from this perspective, he was doing enough, even as an untrained actor at that point, to show that he was going to become somebody.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and when you look at his filmography as well, it doesn't take long for him to get to that leading man status either, does it? Without it in front of me, I don't know whether The Transporter was his first out-and-out leading role. You'll know more than me on that score. But when you look at it, that was maybe, 6 or 7 films into his career, something like that?
Yeah, you're spot on. So that's his 7th movie. And it comes out only a year after this, actually. 2001 was a big year. He had Ghost of Mars, The One, and Mean Machine all out in the same year. And then, a year later, he's leading man in The Transporter, showing off these martial arts skills. We get a little bit in The One, but really showing off his martial arts skills and how he can be a leading man. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's bonkers, isn't it, to think that when he did Lock, Stock and Snatch, they were those low budget Cockney gangster capers, and like you say, in those he wasn't the leading man per se, and the roles he played like a sort of a tough guy, roguish character, but there was no action in those films, at least not by his character, was there? To literally go from those films to all of a sudden be thrust into this world of Hollywood action, it seemingly came from nowhere. They're like this meteoric rise, wasn't it?
And we weren't the only people that noticed it, right? You called him a throwback a minute ago, and he's this co-lead in The Expendables, or second lead, I suppose, is maybe what we want to say. Like, Stallone's the lead, isn't he? He's second lead in Expendables. And look at who he's acting alongside in that movie, like proper elite action stars. And Stallone handpicked him to be alongside him. That says a lot too, doesn't it?
Massively. Yeah, and he holds his own, because like you said, there's icons in that trilogy of films, soon to be a quadrilogy. Yeah, quadrilogy, that's the word, isn't it? There's iconic actors in there, isn't there? You can, pontificate all day as to whether they're great actors or not, but they're iconic screen presences. And he just is up there with them, isn't he? I mean, he's the only character in The Expendables that they even attempt to sort of give any depth to outside of being in The Expendables. At least, they give him a go. They give him Charisma Carpenter as a girlfriend, and show that he has some kind of life outside the mercenary team. Granted, she's sort of disappeared by part 3, I think. I can't remember now whether she's appears at the bar at the end. I can't remember. I'll have to rewatch that. But he literally had the only character with some meat on the bones, apart from, like you said, Stallone's. And yeah, he can do it all. He's a great action star, and in an era we live in where action stars are not few and far between, but there's less of them than there used to be. Actors who are out and out action stars. You get actors who do great action, like sort of a Tom Cruise or a Keanu Reeves. They have action franchises that are second to none, but they also do other kinds of films, don't they? Where Statham, probably 98% of his cinematic output is action movies, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great shout, and I think that's why Hobbs and Shaw works so well, right? And why they span that off out of Fast and Furious to Vin Diesel's dismay, because those two guys are really and I know The Rock does more stuff, particularly comedy, doesn't he? But they're probably the only two I can think of off the top of my head who are, as you said, proper out and out action stars nowadays.
Yeah, unapologetic, sort of, especially in the era we live in now, sort of unreconstituted sort of men of action, aren't they? Which again is not something that sort of pervades that much anymore. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll let other people debate that. That's fine, but it's refreshing to see. It's pure escapism, isn't it?
It is, and it's we're of a similar age. It's the stuff we grew up watching. We bonded 18 months, a couple of years ago ourselves over many of the sort of films we grew up watching amongst the Comics in Motion and VHS Strikes Back community. It's for us, really, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, he knows what his audience is, isn't it? And he plays to his audience. I think he knows what works for him. I don't think you'll ever see Statham, especially at this point in his career, where he must be mid-50s now by this point. I would have thought. I think he sort of knows who he is and what he does best. And I don't think you'll ever see him in a film in the foreseeable future where you think he's been miscast or anything like that. I think he knows what his strengths are, what his audience wants from him, and how to deliver it.
Yeah, agreed. You're right. You're spot on. Again, you're a man, you see. 50, I think he's literally 55, I think. I think you're spot on.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Wow, I didn't know he was exactly. I thought it maybe like 53, 52.
67. Oh. IMDb says he was born. Right. I teach English, not maths. So I was trying to do that quickly in my head as we were talking.
Yeah. No, that's right. Your maths does you credit. Yeah, 55. God. That's 13 years older than me, and I wish I was in a quarter of that kind of shape. I really do.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if I've got any kind of I'm not going to have it. I don't have it now, but I was going to say in another 13 years' time, if I've got any kind of Stath ability or body, I'll be happy. And not only will I be happy, other people in my life will be quite happy, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah. I mean, I grown getting out of a chair, so my hopes of sort of roundhouse kicking goons and jumping off things and shooting guns, I think that's never going to happen, unfortunately.
No. Do you know what? You might be the same. We're going to go on a tangent here. I remember growing up thinking like, oh, why does my mum have to make so many noises when she moves around? And that is now who I am turning into. You're so spot on as well. It's just like getting up, getting down, turning, lifting. Everything comes with a noise now for some reason.
Yeah, breathing, blinking. Yeah.
I catch myself doing it as well, and I'm trying to stop myself, but it's involuntary.
Oh no, I can't get up without going. Whoop!
Yeah.
Well, it is what it is. It is what it is.
So at this point, back in sort of pre-2001, I suppose, when he was cast, he gets that phone call. Right, he's been in Lock, Stock. He had his role written for him in Snatched by Guy Ritchie. They formed that friendship, which is going to continue to the very day. His next movie.
Yeah,
he's going to take this role, isn't he? No matter what, when he gets offered a John Carpenter movie.
Oh, why wouldn't you? That's his age, at that stage of his career. And there's some decent names in this cast as well. You're taking that all day long. His agent must have been superb back in those days as well. To get him into that situation, get him in front of these people, like we said earlier, to go from what he'd done at that point to this. He really must have had some great representation behind him to get him into that shop window. But yeah, why wouldn't you take this film on? Why wouldn't you? And it's a fun role as well that he has. I bet he had a blast making it.
It's interesting you say that, because I do wonder. I watched the behind the scenes, like making of. It's about 20 minutes long. Yeah. And he doesn't feature in it at all whatsoever. Right. So it's interesting to consider like how much he was around on set, or whether he was getting on with Carpenter, or it's just interesting that, and it's a pretty shoddily made making of, if I'm honest. Yeah. Most other people feature at least, even if they're in the background, but yeah, he doesn't feature at all.
Right. That's a shame. Unless he was, I don't know, living the method life or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, I've never heard any stories of the making of this film involving him as such. I've not heard any of his co-stars or Carpenter himself say, "Oh, that Jason Statham, what a dick he was to work with." I've never heard any of that, and I've never heard anything from Statham's mouth, good or bad, about this production either. Maybe there might be something out there. I'll have to, have a look it up and see if there's any comments he made, early interviews at this time. But I don't know. I just think his role must have been quite a fun role, really. Fire guns, chat up women, and just have fun, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, I'm not sure a lot of the people that are cast in this are probably crying out and celebrating their appearance. But as we said, like at that time, you've got to take it. And it's funny you mentioned about the manager that you would have, or the agent that he would have had. Like Dave and I said exactly the same when we were watching Turn It Up. Like, how has he got suddenly these roles in Hollywood movies? A year after Snatch. Or would turn up the same year as Snatch, where he hadn't really proven himself yet. He hadn't really shown anything he could do. I mean, I guess he was auditioning a lot, sending a lot of tapes. So that charisma must have been coming through there too.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd love to know what was going on at that time. I mean, obviously, I guess as any actor will say, it's all about right place, right time, and your face fitting what that particular director or casting director is looking for. It's the look of the draw, I guess. But it was just seemingly just from nowhere, wasn't it?
And weirdly, talking of let's say to look at this point, he has hair.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he does. It's bonkers, isn't it? Because again, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, because you have literally seen all his work. Mm-hmm. Has he ever? I personally haven't any film I've seen him in, other than Revolver, where he wears that really stupid wig. Has he ever had hair on top of his head other than in this film?
I mean, of the three I've watched until this point, and obviously, we'll see as we go, memory, like you're right, he gets wiggy in some of his movies. But Snatch and Lock, Stock, Turn It Up, no hair. So he was obviously asked to grow it out for this for some reason. And it does look like that fluffy, fuzzy, like duckling hair, doesn't it? Like it's that, like it's really holding on to that last little bit.
Yeah, it's quite weird seeing it, actually. It's quite jarring when you're watching it for the first time in over a decade, because you're so used to his look is so much the same all the time, that that shaven head, and there he is with sort of jet black hair on the sides, and like you said, a sort of smattering of jet black hair on the top. It's just it's a really unusual look. It just makes him look a lot younger as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. He's one of those people, actually. I think you'd recognize his silhouette, and there's that saying, isn't it, often, like Indiana Jones is instantly recognizable, and we had that image that was released a few days ago
Yes,
from upcoming Indiana Jones 5. But we talk about actors as well, and I think he has that kind of like almost like hulking shoulder presence, doesn't he, and that big bald head. I think like you would instantly recognize him, and I think maybe that's part of his appeal and how he's caught on and gone on to be so successful, because he has this very identifiable like caricature, I suppose, about him too, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's almost his trademark, isn't it? You a lot of actors change it up in films, and even leading men, some of them don't, but a lot of them do change their appearance and might affect an accent, and think hopefully we'll get on to Statham's transatlantic accent. But yeah, he is kind of almost like he's a modern day Michael Caine, isn't he? Looks and sounds exactly the same in every single thing he does, no matter what he's playing. But that's fine, because that's part of his brand, I guess, isn't it?
Brand is the right word, isn't it? When you cast him, you're getting Jason Statham. You're not getting an actor. You're getting the Stath, which is how I guess he's become known as the Stath.
Absolutely, yeah. He is what he is, isn't he? He's larger than life.
So what do you think of his accent in this movie then? What do you reckon he's going for?
It's hard to say, because most of the time he is English in this. Like he is full on this sort of affected Cockney accent that he has somehow, because I read that he grew up in Norfolk or somewhere like that.
Great Yarmouth, wasn't it? Went to school with Vinnie Jones.
Right, there you go. So, I've spent time in Great Yarmouth because I've got family in Norfolk. So I know how they speak there. It's all are you all right? Are you all right? How you doing? You all right? And they don't speak like, fucking this, fucking that. So quite where that's come from, I'm not entirely sure, but whatever, it works for him. So yeah, in this film, it's mostly that, but then like he does in a lot of his American films, doesn't he? He slides into that. It's not English, it's not American, it's sort of mid-Atlantic, isn't it? It's like he doesn't want to commit one way or the other. It's a strange accent that he does in films, isn't it?
It's gonna get worse from here in some of his roles for sure, where he pushes it, doesn't he, for a little while in a couple of movies, and then somebody somewhere says, look, just don't bother, just stick to your own accent. I can't remember the one. I think he does it in the one, doesn't he?
Probably does, because this was early days, wasn't it?
Yeah, and definitely the first Transporter, there's an attempt, but kind of by Transporter 3, whether his character's meant to have like moved to England or what, I don't know, and given up, but definitely the accent's gone by then.
Yeah, it's fine. Again, it's one of them where you can just do your own accent. It never stopped Arnold Schwarzenegger being a megastar having the same accent, and they can just write your character a reason for having such a distinguished accent. They'll always find a way, like they always did it with Jean-Claude Van Damme as well.
Exactly who I was thinking of.
Yeah. Oh, I was brought up in Europe, and all this, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's fine. But his accent is so muddled, it's untrue.
Yeah. I didn't find it too bothersome in this movie. I think in the back of my head, I've got like a couple of movies where I think it's going to be much more of a feature. Yeah.
It's there's a bit more consistency here. I think his character is brilliantly named Jericho Butler. I've spent my 42 years on this planet. I've never met anyone called Jericho.
No,
and it is an ambition of mine to actually meet someone and go, "Hi, my name's Jericho." It'd be great. They must, in this day and age, there must be some out there.
Oh yeah, sure.
Kids being named all kinds of weird and wonderful names. I remember there was a girl in my brother's class at school called Sunbeam.
Oh, lovely.
But lovely, isn't it? Yeah, but no Jericho, sadly.
No, that is a shame.
Yeah, hope springs eternal.
I mean, interestingly enough, the Dwayne Johnson was called Jericho in Southland Tales, so that they've both shared the name Jericho at some point in their careers.
Oh, nice. And Arnold Schwarzenegger in End of Days is called Jericho.
Yeah,
Jericho Kane, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a good name for an action guy to be called Jericho.
Clearly, there's something going on here. Yeah,
there is. Yeah. Those are the only three I think of, other than Chris Jericho. The rest.
This might be the next project, though. The side project. Action characters called Jericho. I quite like the idea.
I bet there's loads. I bet there's bound to be a canon film that has a actor called Jericho in it. I'll find that out for you.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
So speaking of his character in this, he is a mercenary. Do we want to call him that? He's part of a squad, isn't he, that's sent in to Mars to bring Desolation, Ice Cube's character, back for trial. And what they're unaware of is that this colony of Mars, which is somewhere like, was it 89 or something like that? They gave us a random number during the opening credits, and the explanation of what's going on has been 89 or something percent terraformed. But what they were unaware of is that there's an ancient civilization underneath Mars that has gone extinct, but their spirits live on, and they accidentally release them to become the titular ghosts of Mars.
Yes.
I mean, I love that we've gone in deep on the Stath there, which I think is great. But to think about the film wider a little bit, I don't think John Carpenter was trying very hard in this instance. I mean, obviously, Assault on Precinct 13 is one of his. This clearly has echoes of that, and that was harkening back to Rio Bravo, I believe, which is a Western, which is one of his favorite films. This is clearly like a Western in space.
Yeah,
like Mad Max is a clear influence, and I've heard some people say they believe this influenced Mad Max Fury Road, which I think is an interesting comparison. I'm not sure George Miller watched this and thought, "Ooh, I want to make my version of Ghosts of Mars." But thoughts on the kind of general plot, if you can call it that?
Yeah, I think the plot is probably thinner than the top of his head in this film. There's not a lot there, is there? So it's kind of this weird mishmash of genres. Is it a science fiction film? Is it a horror film? Is it an action film? Is it a Western film? What is it? Well, it's a bit of everything, I suppose, isn't it? And like you said, it's a very thin plot. We're on Mars. It's 200 years in the future. There's Earth has colonized Mars, and there's a prisoner there. So they're going in this sort of small police task force, of which he is one of, to go and get the prisoner, transfer him, bring him back for his court date. And like you said, when they get there, it's a case of every man and woman for himself. Prisoners, cops, the local townsfolk all banding together, trapped in this complex, trying to get out alive and make that train to get out of the city. And that's it. That is the plot, really. And it's, there's sort of interesting interactions in between there. It's one thing I did quite like as well, actually, that's established right at the start, is now that Earth has now become a matriarchal society, which is probably the way forward in real life, I would suggest.
It is.
Based on how the world is right now. I wouldn't mind it. It would be great in a lot of ways.
I'm with you on that point. I'd picked up on that too, because then I wondered how it plays out in the film. I'm not sure where we see that being important. I don't know if you...
No, not really. I mean, I suppose you've got...
Because then, as you said, he's still a sex pest. So clearly the matriarchal society that he is grown up in still allows him to sexually pester, particularly one character, Natasha Henstridge's lead.
Yeah,
I'm not. It's an interesting detail that I'm not sure goes anywhere.
I know. Yeah, I mean, you get obviously the leader of the police strike team is played by Pam Grier, so there's a woman leading it, and then obviously again this whole film is told as one sort of massive extended flashback, so that it starts with Natasha Henstridge's character being cross-examined by this panel, and the leader of which is a woman as well. So it does establish that women are in the positions of power, but like you said, it doesn't really play out during the course of the film because of the way the way his character behaves.
Yeah.
But I like the concept of it being a matriarchal society in the future, and where that goes. And it doesn't, like you said, in some ways, it's quite good that it doesn't sort of make any massive impacts on the plot, because it's not Carpenter saying, right, women are in charge now, and women are in the positions of dominance, I should say, rather than the traditional sort of male counterparts. So because that's happened, the way in which society is run is now like this. I suppose in a way he's just saying, well, what is the difference? There is no difference. If you put the women in those positions of power, in essence, like I said, life would probably be a lot better. But in essence, the world carries on as it was. Maybe that was what he was trying to say. I really don't know.
No, I mean, like you say, I think you've argued around that quite nicely there. I think Carpenter would appreciate your backing up of his idea of the matriarchy, and perhaps it's important to say maybe this is where we should go rather than making a big deal of it. Pam Grier, though, she can act. We know she can. I'm not. She's trying to be bothered in this movie, though. She is awful.
She's not alone in this film.
She's not alone. No, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, she's only sort of 3 or 4 years post Jackie Brown here. So a sort of star had been sort of reascended at that point by being the star of a Tarantino movie. And I suppose by here she's going back on that sort of downward curvature again from being, considered a big star again. Yeah, she is pretty terrible in it, I'll be honest. Again, I don't want to badmouth Pam Grier because she's a legendary actress, and she's done loads of stuff I really have enjoyed over the years and continue to. She's great. But yeah, I think she's phoning it in here. She really is in her interactions. I mean, to be fair, she's not on screen that long. She's probably only on her screen time is probably 10 to 15 minutes max, because I don't know how much you want to spoil on this show, but she's...
we spoil it all. Go for it.
Oh, right, okay. Well, all right, she gets killed. She gets killed off halfway through.
Not even that, probably. As you said, she's the first one to go, isn't she?
Yes, yeah, she's the first one to bite the bullet in a really horrific way as well, actually. So yeah, she's not in it that much. So I think she was just there for a decent payday, maybe. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head when after you watched this, and we were speaking about it the other day, and you were saying about the acting in this film or lack thereof. With some exceptions, the acting in this is woeful, isn't it?
It's pretty, woeful is the right word. And I think I absolutely agree with Pam Grier. I'm not bad-mouthing her at all. I think she just couldn't be bothered here. And I think she was probably there for a couple of days to get the cash and get out. I mean, her character's even killed off screen. We don't even get to see it happen. They clearly had run out of their time with her and didn't want to pay out any more money to get her back to film her actual death scene. And I think, it's interesting reading it now, reading stuff about it now, watching it in 2022, that sense of who she is as a character. She is perhaps portraying her character as being gay. She seems to be making advances towards Natasha Henstridge. She's obviously black.
Oh, yeah.
So they kill off the black lesbian first, but slightly problematic when you watch it from the 2022 lens, isn't it? Unfortunately, I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it, but
no, I guess not. I suppose he has to kill off the leader of the team so her character can step up and become the leader of the group, which is what she becomes. She's the leading lady of the film. So I suppose you've got to do away with the leader of the squad so someone else can rise up. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, you're killing off a minority figure. So yeah, there is some problematic elements to it. And I wish she'd stuck around longer, because as woeful as her acting is in it, at least she is a screen presence and is able to elicit some personality and some emotion. And Natasha Henstridge, as the de facto star of this film, is the lieutenant who takes her spot as the leader once she's killed. She doesn't, she'd done Species, 5 or 6 years before this, and that made her a hot property for a few years in Hollywood.
For a particular reason, right?
Yeah, I guess
not for her acting.
No, I guess not, to be fair. But there's none of that in this film, that's for sure. And
no,
I think her sort of level of personality in this film is so one note throughout this film. There's no up or down to her performance. She's just very sort of on the level all the way through. I mean, you know, maybe that's what she was told to do. I don't know, but she never goes up or down, even when she's allegedly high off drugs, or you know, when she's infected by the ghosts, albeit temporarily. There just never seems to be any up or down to her performance, and I just, you know, when you read about it, she actually wasn't the first choice for this role. Right, and I don't know if this is true, but I read this on Wikipedia, so everything on Wikipedia must be taken with a soupçon of salt. But it says here that the original first choices for the role were Michelle Yeoh, Famke Janssen, and Franca Potente, and they all must have turned it down. So then they didn't go to Natasha Henstridge after that. They cast Courtney Love, right? Courtney Love, the lead singer from Hole, who, to be fair, has done acting. She was quite good in the People versus Larry Flynn. You know, she can act. There's no question about it. But it says here she was originally cast, and then she left the project after her boyfriend's ex-wife ran over her foot in her car while she was in training for the film. There you go. And then Natasha Henstridge replaced her because her boyfriend at the time is one of the other, who's basically the other male in the police unit. That's not Jason Statham. The other guy who's so inconsequential, I can't remember what his name is or what his character's name is, but they were an item at the time. And he said, look, you know, my other half is Natasha Henstridge, and she's not doing much, because I think she literally went in at no notice. It was like a Michael Biehn in Aliens kind of vibe, where, you know, they literally were like, shit, production's going to start and we have no one. And he's like, oh, my girlfriend's available and she's a name. And they went, right, get her in. So I think it does show, though, doesn't it? She doesn't seem particularly invested in it.
No. I love that Michael Biehn comparison in terms of the situation, but I'm sure we both agree, not in terms of the quality of actor or performance, because he's phenomenal in The Terminator.
Michael Biehn is badass in everything he ever does. It's, you know, it's a shame we don't see more of him in things. He is just one of the greatest sort of understated action men of the 80s. He was fantastic, and it's always good when he pops up in stuff. Like he was in The Mandalorian, wasn't he? He was in an episode of that. I think he popped up in an episode of The Walking Dead. But other than that, you don't really see him much, and it's a shame because he is still a badass.
Agreed. You picked the scene out which stood out to me for Natasha Henstridge, which is when she's been possessed by the ghost spirits, which we're going to have to get into that massive plot hole in a minute. And then it's been established earlier on that she is addicted to some sort of stimulant, some sort of drug, but that she's got it under enough control that she can sort of take it. And the Pam Grier's character sees her doing it. It's kind of like, make sure you're not too high when we get to do the mission. So she's got it under some sort of control, but it means it's constantly in her system. So Desolation then gives her one of her pills, doesn't he, once she's been possessed?
Yes. Which
forces the Mars spirit out of her. And that's the scene you were talking about, where the acting is absolutely atrocious.
Yes, yeah.
It's one of those scenes where I almost had to look away from the screen, because, you know, when you watch Ricky Gervais, you're meant to be cringing. Yeah. But this had that same effect on me as I was watching it. It was terrible.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not great. But to be fair to Natasha Henstridge, she's not alone in this film.
Oh, you know? No. I mean,
it's, you know, terrible.
Much like Turn It Up, I think the Statham comes out of this really, really well. And I think, you know, we've identified he clearly had charisma. He probably had a good agent. He had these unseen abilities which hadn't been tapped into yet, but perhaps he was showing off in auditions and tapes and stuff. But he also keeps getting himself cast in movies against people who are really, really shit. So he, by comparison, looks really good.
Yeah. He's a very clever man, isn't he? And his representatives are very clever. That's a great way to build your career, isn't it? Star opposite shit and you'll shine. Wow, that's
because he has to give like a rallying speech, doesn't he, towards the end? And actually, it's, you know, it's up there. You know, it's not like up there with Braveheart or anything like that, but he does a decent job. And I think, again, it's by comparison to what we've witnessed over the last 90 or so minutes from everyone else.
Yeah, no, he's again very fine in it. I mean, I guess we can talk about his character and the problematic elements of his character. I mean, it probably doesn't fly quite so well now, 20 years on. Probably didn't back then thinking about it either, but his, shall we say, his dogged pursuit of Natasha Henstridge's character, literally from the very first scene where you meet them all when they're on the train, on their way in, and they're just sort of, establishing what's going to go on and everything. And literally up till just before he dies, he is literally just trying to just get into her knickers for the entire film, isn't he?
I've always found this like trope very strange. And I know, like, I think Tony's spoken about before as well on his podcast, the sense of like you're in this life or death situation, and for some reason you're thinking about getting it on. Like, surely, how is that not the furthest thing from your mind? I suppose there's that argument of like, if you're horny teenagers in it, like off in the woods and it's the apocalypse, like, well, we might as well because we're going to die. But when you are literally like, there's zombified people on the door outside, shall we? It's very odd.
It is. I think if that was me in that situation, I just would not be in any mood or any state to perform in that situation. I would
screams of my colleagues dying gets me off. It's very weird.
Exactly. I get the element where you think, well, this could be my last chance in my life because we could potentially die. But the fact that I could potentially die would literally negate any sort of sexual feelings I had towards anybody at that point. It would literally just be like, kill it dead, I think.
It's a very dated character type, isn't it, that he's playing in this? He essentially exists to try and get in her pants and to open doors. There is two skills.
Yeah.
We need this door open. Come on, Jason Statham. We need to make Natasha Henstridge uncomfortable. Come on, Jason Statham.
Yeah, he's very good with a keypad, isn't he? To get through these locked doors. But but it's the way he speaks as well, isn't it? Some of the stuff he comes out with, he's not like doing it in a sort of subtle, flirty kind of roguish way. He's really sort of explicit with it and
aggressive,
unsubtle. And he's like one of those kind of guys who refuses to take no for an answer. I mean, some of the stuff comes out with as well when she makes some wisecrack about how men exaggerate, saying like she holds up her fingers like that and saying, and that's 8 inches, isn't it? And then he goes, well, yeah, I've got the opposite problem. And all this. and then he says to her, maybe a connoisseur like yourself would appreciate what I have to offer. And it's like, come on, who says that? Who says that? First of all, calling her a connoisseur, so you're essentially saying that she's a slag, and then you're sort of bragging about what you've got down there. It's just like, it seems like a lot of empty bluster, really, and it is quite uncomfortable, isn't it? When I rewatched it tonight, I watched it with Sarah, my other half, and I did feel quite uncomfortable with those moments, having my other half sat with me, because it's just not quite pleasant, is it?
No, and I think that the trouble is it's played for laughs, isn't it? Or these things are okay if they're denigrated, right? If you say like this is not the way to behave, but unfortunately she caves to his charms by the end of by the end of the movie. So I'm not sure what message that's sending either.
Exactly. Yeah. If you behave like that, lads, eventually they'll come round to your way of thinking or something like that.
No doesn't mean no. If you just keep going, she'll eventually say yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but like you said, it does work for him in the end. And if they weren't sort of rudely interrupted by some catastrophe happening, he would have got his end away. But what it does do, actually, and I read this, I think it's true. Yeah, it must be because it's on like his full film. This was the first ever on-screen kiss for Mrs. Statham.
Wow.
Yeah, because I guess in Lock, Stock and Snatch he didn't kiss anyone, and
no,
I've yet to see Turn It Up, but I know obviously you've recently watched it, and I'm guessing he gets no action in that either.
No action in that, I'm afraid. No, so that's spot on. Yeah, this is his first on-screen kiss.
Yeah. So that's quite a landmark moment for him, I suppose.
I suppose,
but the way he gets it is in such an unappealing and wrong way. It's just not a good look. I mean, again, it's no reflection on him. He's playing a character here. Let's get real. But it's just not a good look in this day and age. I don't think. I don't think you would get that anymore in a film of this type.
definitely not. And you think about other John Carpenter characters. You think about Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. He's kind of similar in that way. He's kind of dogged pursuit of women that he's attracted to, but he's such a doofus that it's skewed that you judge him for it. I know he is a likable character. I don't know. There's just a fine line where you get that character right, you get it wrong. And I think Jack Burton in Big Trouble is played just right by that being Kurt Russell's inherent charm or charisma or acting ability, or how he makes that a character. And I think maybe if Statham got this later in his career, he might have done something a bit more with it. But yeah, at this point, it just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. It's quite uncomfortable. But at the same time, you never truly think his character is a complete bastard, because he's sort of steadfast to the job. He doesn't sort of sell out any of his team. He's there for them. When the time comes to sort of do what they've got to do, he's in there at the front of it. So although he's kind of really sort of gross in his pursuit of the Melanie Ballard character, his character is redeemed by all his other actions. He's brave. He's honest. I guess he is honest. In a weird way, and goes out fighting as well. Literally, it's quite an end he gets.
He gets the kind of classic zombie movie ripped to pieces death, doesn't he?
He does, but you don't see it, do you? Because I
Sadly.
guess again, maybe budgetary reasons, he literally sort of gets overwhelmed and sort of piled on. But then you don't really see more than a couple of seconds of them sort of piling on. So you don't see how if they're sort of what they're actually doing to him underneath that, So it's a bit of a shame. But again, though, as well as his first kisses, must be one of his few on-screen deaths. I know he dies in obviously the one we've just mentioned, your last episode, and he obviously dies in this. But I can't think of many other films that he's been in where he actually dies. Are there any others? I can't think of any.
No, that's interesting. Not off the top of my head. No.
No, I suppose if you're an action leading man, then you tend, most 99% of the time, you don't get killed off, do you? So
no, I mean, he's the bad guy in Cellular, isn't he? Is what I was going to say. So maybe in that, but it's been a long time since I've seen that movie. So until I get to rewatch it, I couldn't say for sure.
Yeah, well, that's one of the ones I haven't seen, so I can't comment on that. But I guess if he's the bad guy, he probably does. Yeah, but even when he was the bad guy in Fast and Furious, he sort of just gets locked up, and then he's a good guy by the next film. So it's there's many ways out of these things, but yeah, it's an interesting way. But he has some good stuff in the film, doesn't he? I mean, there's some good stuff to hang your hat on. His faces that he pulls are really quite something. I found, like when he finds Pam Grier's sort of severed head on a stake, rather than being like, oh shit, he pulls this really weird face where he's like trying to, he looks sort of confused. I don't know whether at this point he hadn't sort of developed the full range of acting skills, but he really does pull some strange faces when everything's going to shit around him. He pulls his face where he looks kind of angry and confused, yet also, I don't know, maybe a little constipated, I'm not sure, but it's a very interesting range of faces he pulls in this film.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think like his line delivery isn't always quite there. Yeah, either is there, because straight after this scene, it stood out to me when he's like reporting back over the radio of what's going on. It's just he's just found his captain dead and decapitated. Good amount of decapitations in this movie, and then he's seen this whole like horde of possessed Martian people, and he reports back like, I think we're in a bit of a situation here. There's no like urgency. There's no fear. There's no like.
Yeah.
We're definitely towards the start of his career, perhaps in line delivery and facial expression. Yeah.
Yeah. He also got the short straw when it came to the goggles as well, because everyone else has these, like Natasha Henstridge's character. They're just kind of badass wraparound like glasses. They look quite cool actually. Pam Grier is the same. And I don't know whether he was last to the props basket or something, but he has these massive like ski goggles on throughout the entire film. And he obviously doesn't wear them where they're inside, but every time they go out into the Mars atmosphere, he's got these like Dennis Taylor style full face goggles on. He just looks really weird at some point. You kind of like just laughing at him because he's wearing. They're just so bizarre. But I guess that's kind of the appeal to him. Yeah.
Seems to have a good sense of humor about himself. I'm sure he didn't care really.
Nah, probably not. He was getting paid, wasn't he? So
once you've been in that Shaman video, it's all up from there.
That's true. Yeah, at least he wasn't spray painted silver and gold and having to dance in his speedos.
Exactly.
I guess, wearing a pair of goggles is nothing to him, I suppose. Yeah. But he does well with what he's given. I think in this film, it's not, when you look at his CV as a whole from top to bottom. I think the films he did, the first two films he did in his career, were better than this one, and I think after this, there's a lot better than this sort of in his oeuvre. But he's fine. It's not a great film, but it's not down to him. I think he delivers. He delivers what he has to. The film itself is okay. It's watchable. It's serviceable, but it doesn't live up to much. I don't think. It's a shame. One thing I was going to mention to you actually as well is what I'd love to get your take on it. Is for me the very opening of the film obviously shows the train coming back from the situation, and Natasha Henstridge is literally the sole survivor, handcuffed to the bed. She's been left there, and then obviously she gets this hearing where she has to lay it out to them as to what's happened. Do you think that was a really bad choice to start the film with, because it in effect spoils the fate of everybody else in the film? Because from there you get to meet her unit, and there's Natasha Henstridge, there's Jason Statham, there's all these other people you get to meet, and because there's only her comes back. Obviously I can't say whether or not there's someone else who survives to the end, but do you not think it's a bad choice because it spoils in a way what's to come, because you're thinking, right, they're dead, they're dead, or not,
I know exactly what you're saying. It's the trouble with all framing devices in this way, isn't it? Is that the fate of that character, and that leads you into believing the fate of everyone else's. I guess here, because the type of movie you're watching going in, nearly everybody's going to die anyway, other than the main character. So I think I found more of an issue was the flashbacks within the flashbacks within the flashbacks within the flashbacks in a film that really, as you said, is pretty straightforward in terms of this unit needs to go there and get this guy and get out, and they can't because of this issue. But then you start getting like the flashbacks of the three guys that Statham finds in the tool shed and what happened to them, and then you get the flashback of Joanna Cassidy's character, the doctor, and how she discovered his tomb.
Yes,
it starts like spiraling in terms of all these different flashbacks that are mostly unnecessary, to be honest, that don't add too much to it.
Yeah, I guess maybe Carpenter's trying to be a bit too clever with his own script here. I don't know. It's I get what they're doing, but it just, like you said, it's completely unnecessary, isn't it? They could have just told the story in a linear fashion. They didn't really need to have it in this way, going in and out of time periods, and then seeing things from one person's perspective and then another. You
get that almost Rashomon type idea, don't you?
Rashomon, yeah, or appropriately for Statham, Wrath of Man.
Nice, I like it.
That's the same kind of method, isn't it? That tells exactly the same story from 4 or 5 different perspectives before bringing it all together at the end. And there was another film like that a few years ago. What was it called now? Vantage Point. I don't know
I saw that too.
Yeah. With Dennis Quaid and Matthew Fox and a few other people. Might be Forrest Whitaker might be in it. But again, that told you the exact same series of events, but then replayed it from literally different vantage points. But that kind of works because that's not just retelling the story. You're seeing it from a completely different set of eyes. Whereas this is just filling in narrative blanks, isn't it?
It is.
It's not adding a twist on things. Rather than someone just telling you where they've been and what they've done, they have to then go off and do this scene where it shows you what they've done. But like you said, it's not really needed. Like when Ice Cube says how he ended up there, he's like, oh yeah, I was going to catch a train and then went to shit, and it literally just shows him opening a door, walking into a room with his shotgun, and everyone's hung up from the ceiling with no heads because of what's happened. But that's it. It's completely superfluous, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I don't think a single one. I mean, maybe the flashback of how the spirits got released we could have watched that, but we didn't need to see the Doctor's character like in a hot air balloon like glider thing coming, like all of it pretty necessary. And certainly the three guys who Jason Statham finds in a tool shed, like fine, just bring them with you. We don't need to know how they got there and their backstory either. You hinted though that Natasha Henstridge may not be the only survivor, and we learned, don't we, that Ice Cube's Desolation was with her on the train. He does survive after having the showdown with the final what's he called, Big Daddy Mars.
Yes,
he has a showdown with him on the train and defeats him, where he does a Darth Vader no and gets exploded. And then we get a stinger scene right at the end. What did you think of the stinger scene when Natasha Henstridge has been cleared, I suppose, of any wrongdoing in the trial, and then she wakes up the next morning, there's screams in the background, and here is desolation. What did you think?
I like the concept of it being that they didn't kill the alien spirits, and now they've drifted from that outpost to this big city, and now the exact same thing is going to happen in the city. I like that concept of it, but the ridiculousness of him, not so much that he comes in to find her, because you sense that they formed a bit of a bond through the
She
film.
lets him go, essentially, doesn't she?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. She could have shot him, I suppose, and he could have killed her, I guess. So they've grown to respect each other and what they bring to the table. But that awful bit straight after that, where they sort of get tooled up, they got the guns, and that awful line about she's like, you could, if you were a good guy, you'd be a great cop or something. And he goes, yeah, well, you'd make a great crook or something like this. And then they look at each other and then go, nah. Then let's just shoot our way out or something, and then it ends. Oh, Jesus, wept. It's a terrible way to end the film.
It's awful, isn't it? It feels massively tacked on as well. Like, and the arrogance to think that we're going to get a sequel to this.
Oh, the fucking balls on John Carpenter, thinking that people wanted to see more. My God Almighty, because it would have literally been more of the same, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing about this Ghost of Mars is essentially it's luck of the draw as to whether you get possessed by one. Because whenever you kill someone who is possessed, the spirit leaves their body, and then there's the shots in the film where you're seeing things through the spirit's eyes, aren't you?
Yeah, point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, just puts a red filter on the lens, and they kind of weaves in and out of everyone, and then randomly just goes up someone's ear, and that's their new host. But so there's no way to actually survive it other than just being lucky, are you, really? Because yes, you can kill everything in front of you and be a badass and all the rest of it. But essentially, once the spirits are in the air, the ghosts are in the air, if they're going to come in through your ear and possess you, what the hell are you going to do to stop them? I don't know. Walk around with a headset on or something? I don't know.
Well, as we find out, there's only one thing you can do, which is take drugs, which force them out. But yet, nobody seems to do that in order to make sure they don't get possessed, which is that first massive plot hole I was alluding to earlier, that they discover there's kind of a way to stop it happening, but they decide, we just won't bother. And the other thing I thought, which was crazy, go on. You had a thought?
No, I'm agreeing with you, because he saw her literally come back from it. So why didn't they all go, I know, and then all take some? Yeah, stupid, yeah.
Because the other thing, you were just saying, like, you get this kind of handheld, it's like almost like Sam Raimi Evil Dead camera movement through the air, much less technically proficient and interesting. But and then people get possessed.
Yeah.
Why don't they just shoot these things in the leg and immobilize them? They keep killing all these possessed people. It's just, I know, like, we shouldn't often pick these things apart afterwards because, but Carpenter is a smart guy. We know he is. He's proved it with the movies he's made.
Yeah.
All I could think all the way through was like, if you kill this person, you are going to get, like it's you and me, right, in a room. You're possessed. If I shoot you, it's going to possess me. So I wouldn't shoot you to kill you, would I? I would shoot you to immobilize you and run away. I couldn't get over it, and it just ruined the rest of the movie for me.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it defies logic, doesn't it? It's like they seem to make the wrong choices at every turn. But yeah, why would you do that? If you've got the choice, And by then they've established how it works as well, haven't they? So when they're having that big shootout at the end, it's not like a case of, just I can kill them all because that's the way we're going to survive this. They know at this point that that's how the transmission works. So yeah, why don't they do things like that?
All they're going to do is just release thousands of spirits into the atmosphere. Which
is essentially what happens, because they go back, don't they? They've actually escaped at one point, and there's a few of them left on that train, three or four of them or something, and the driver, and they've got away, and then they go, no, we need to go back and finish this once and for all by, I don't know, they overload the
like the nuclear reactor. I don't know, isn't it?
Yeah, leave the fucking oven switched on or something. I don't know, but do something that basically creates like the equivalent of a nuclear explosion and wipes out the town, which will do that. But like you said, in doing that, they kill hundreds of these infected zombie type characters. But in doing that, that releases this massive plume of red gas into the air, spirits, which is exactly then at the end what's creeping towards the city right at the end of the film. So they brought it on them. They brought it on themselves, because they could have at least got to the city before all the infected hordes, and then go, right, this is what's happened. They're probably going to find a way here at some point. So this is what we need to do to stop them. Not, I don't know, we'll blow them up and then just deal with the red cloud when it gets here. Stupid.
I think stupid is probably the buzzword for this movie, sadly.
Yeah, it is. But it's
enjoyable. Stupid.
Yeah, you can always pick holes in these kind of films, can't you? Holes of logic and of characters' choices and things. But it's not the kind of film you should watch with your critical eye and thinking cap on, is it? Really, it's just one you should just disengage your brain and try and enjoy for 90 minutes. If you can.
Definitely. And it looks like a lot of people do. As you said, we said it's certainly got its big cult following.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, Carpenter remains a big figure despite his sort of, I guess, virtual retirement now. But he's still a presence on the scene. He goes and does sort of live concerts now because obviously he writes the score for most of his films and he's a musician. My friend went to see him in Manchester, probably 3 or 4 years ago. I'm really jealous, but he goes and puts on these live shows where, it's kind of like like Hans Zimmer does with an orchestra, and they'll play pieces he's written to footage of from the various films. Carpenter does the same, but it's like a rock band setup and synths, and they'll play his iconic piece of music from his film with footage playing behind them and things like that.
That is cool.
Really cool. So he's very much still a key figure and a present figure. So as long as that's the case, there'll always be people who go and check out his film.
Definitely, and he's doing all the music for all the new Halloweens, isn't he? At the moment.
Right, yeah, of course. He's still hands-on, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because it's at the end of the day, the Halloween characters are his creation. So obviously, I guess I don't know whether he still has a piece of the rights. I guess that franchise has been through so many guises and studios and whatnot. I don't know whether that's the case, but he is one of my favorite directors. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. The films, his best films are up there with anything in terms of like genre cinema. It's just a shame that there's films like this and John Carpenter's Vampires as well, which isn't so great, and is sort of more latter day output. But there was a time there where, from the sort of late 70s right up to probably the late 80s, where everything he touched was gold, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so before we wrap up, we've just been speaking about music. I wanted to get your thoughts as, a music man, what you thought of the soundtrack of this, because obviously Carpenter led on what he composed, but then he collaborated with some amazing people. So, but looking it up, there was Anthrax, Steve Vai, Buckethead, Robin Fink, like all these names which probably for you were going like pinging off on your brain about bands they're in and songs they've done. I had to look most of them up, if I'm honest, but I wonder what you thought about the soundtrack.
Oh, I love the soundtrack, and I think it suits the kind of film it is. That kind of heavy metal, thrash metal kind of soundtrack with, like you said, those names you just reeled off. All big names in the world of metal and hard rock. It fits the tone of the film. I think it works really well. It takes a while to get to that stage at the start when you get the footage of the really cool, like miniature footage, model footage of the train. sort of, on its way there. And that music is very Carpenter here. It reminds me a little bit of the opening music to Big Trouble in Little China, that kind of tugging, driving kind of music. I really like that. But then, once like kind of the shit hits the fan and we get to the sort of the action and the nitty gritty, when that metal guitar starts coming in, I think it works perfectly for what you're seeing on the screen. I think if you'd have had like a more traditional score, orchestral stuff or synth stuff, I don't think it would have worked so well. I think this works for the tone and the imagery of the film. What did you think?
Yeah, I think I think it has that kind of, as you said, like metal aesthetic to it, isn't it? I've seen a lot of people compare Big Daddy Mars to Marilyn Manson in terms of his look. So I think it's entirely what he was aiming for. I think that was the sound matched what he wanted to do with the visuals. I think whether it all came together is up for debate, but I think I think what he intended is what we got.
Yeah, it's good. It does work really well, actually. I don't mind trying to pick a copy up or something like this and listen to it in isolation.
I know they brought it out on vinyl, and I think it's like their 20th anniversary of the movie or something. I think they brought it out, so it's out there.
I might try and procure a copy then, because that's the kind of music I'm into. I'll be honest with you. So it's right up my alley, so to speak. Yeah.
All right. So before I get your, the most important, your guess rating, before I get what you think of this film and the Stath within it.
Yeah,
I've procured a couple of opinions from Letterboxd, which is what I'm going to use for this show. I'm trying to get around. You've got a couple of interesting ones. So first one I've got is from He Who Can Dig It. Part of the fun of this is getting the cool names that people come up with. He says, the narrative is all over the place. The acting is just as campy as the dialogue, and the film looks older than it really is. I do love that model train, though, which you just mentioned, which is cool. Ice Cube desperately tries to be badass, but by now you're probably why they didn't give that role to Statham. It's Carpenter at his worst, wildest, or pulpiest. Take your pick. So I think what I'm finding interesting is that often the things that people come on and discuss are often what is out there generally in the public consciousness about this. He's backing up a lot of the stuff that you've said, I think.
Yeah, I think that's just how people think of the film, don't they? I think the opinions of it are quite consistent across the board. I think you'd have to be a special kind of individual to love this film, like unapologetically, like love it, and not in like a not ironic, but in like a campy kind of way that people like so bad it's good type of films, things like this. But I think I've never seen anyone say, "Oh God, I love Ghost of Mars. Oh, what a film! It's one of my favourites." I've never heard anyone say that. I hope to one day, though.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be people out there.
Yeah.
Steve G, though, not such a big fan. He says one of the John Carpenter films I hadn't seen, with good reason, clearly. Well, it's bloody awful. He says it reminds him of a straight-to-video early 90s sci-fi actioner, which I think is pretty accurate. And the cast is hardly an ensemble to remember. Natasha Henstridge, Clea DuVall, Ice Cube, and Jason Statham have all had their moments and been in some fine films, but they're all completely terrible here. Oh, poor Stath. Statham is uncomfortably sleazy with his constant sex pestering of Henstridge as well. I still don't understand the point of this bit of storyline. If it was to set up Statham to end up being an arsehole later on, then fair enough. But it doesn't. He's legitimately meant to be one of the good guys. And what makes the thing worse is that then she then falls for it despite showing no interest in him at all beforehand. So again, like, spot on for what we've commented on ourselves.
I don't disagree with any of that, to be honest with you. I think they've got it bang to rights.
Last one. Wood says it's a terrible John Carpenter movie, but it's a pretty good Ice Cube movie and an incredible Jason Statham movie. Which I'm not sure what to make of that. I think he's being derogatory about our man Stath.
Yeah, I kind of think he's saying it's better than, in his eyes, the shit he does elsewhere, which is complete bollocks.
How dare he?
It's exactly. It's one of the lowest on the rung of Statham's catalogue, I think.
In terms of box office and rating, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, Definitely. I mean, people can make of it what they will. It's all horses for courses, but it's just yeah. I had to slip that in. Sorry. But yeah, it is what it is. It's just one of those films, isn't it? It's kind of it's a moment in time. It's very dated. It was very dated when it came out. It was. I think it was a film that was probably made 10 years too late. I think it would have been, if it had been made early 90s, it probably would have been looked on a lot fonder, or even late 80s. I think it would probably be held up as a bit more of something than it really is. But I think it was just, I don't want to say too little too late, but maybe it is.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Absolutely. It feels like, when you look at the films we referenced, particularly from Carpenter's own back catalogue, where he's almost kind of remaking himself to an extent at this point. Dated is definitely the right word.
I think so. I think at this point he'd maybe slightly run out of steam, if I'm being honest.
So in that case, in terms of the Stath filmography, you've got a choice. Would you consider it a classic, worth catching, or for completists only?
Well, it's certainly not a classic, so we can scrub that one off the list right away. But I think it kind of falls between sort of the grey area between the other two categories you mentioned, in my opinion anyway. I think it is worth watching because there's some good stuff in there. And at the end of the day, it's quite fun. It's not, it's not a dour film. There's fun to be had, but it's just not particularly well executed. It's not particularly well acted, and it's not particularly good. but it does have its moments, and there is something there that you can enjoy, but it doesn't really, I wouldn't say it's standard to repeat viewing. So I wouldn't put it right in the bottom of the category, and I wouldn't put it in the middle. I'd put it maybe 2/3 in the bottom and 1/3 sort of trying to inch into that middle ground, if that makes sense.
So basically worth catching if you're a completist.
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah. What do you reckon?
I'm gonna try and put what's coming later out of my mind as much as I can doing this. So that's why I've been a real stickler for doing this in order, and watching and then recording before I watch the next one. Of the 4 I've seen so far, this is worth catching. Where it all lands in 37 films time, it may slip down a bit.
Yeah, I think when you finally get to the end of this Odyssey and you've captured all of his films, I think this is going to be pretty near the bottom, isn't it? Let's be honest. Yeah. Oh, well.
All right, mate. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and I appreciate your unique perspective. This is due to come out in about a week's time, so I think I'm publishing on the 6th of June. What have you got coming up around that time that you can let people know about?
Yeah, well, as we sit and record this, we record an episode 3 of our mandatory music and CD show tomorrow night as we record this, so it may or may not be. I think it will come out a couple of days after this drops out, actually. So we did the first couple of episodes. It's basically myself, Tony Farina and Dave Horrocks, where we're going back and reviewing classic albums from our youth, our childhood, our teenage years, our 20s, but sort of nothing much after that. And it is purely a random selection. We literally put scores of loads of different albums, good, bad, and indifferent, into the pot. Some I absolutely hate, but some the guys hate, and some that we all are on the same page about. So when we eventually get to those, it should make for interesting listening. But it's literally just a random draw, and that's what we discussed. So we've done 2. The first one was the debut album by Skid Row, and then the second one was Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin, and we're about to record number 3, which is going to be Porno Graffiti by Extreme. A bit of early 90s rock for you there, which we're going to record tomorrow night, and that should be a lot of fun. And then from there, who knows where it goes? There's some stinkers in there, some absolute red herrings in there. So it should be some good. There'll be some. Eventually, I think the show will have something for everyone. But it's in its early days, but we're enjoying it. That's for sure.
Oh, it's been great fun because I've been, as I do as much as I can, if it's comics or films, or I try to keep a pace with all the different shows the Comics in Motion have got coming out. So I listen to each album before I listen to you guys talking about them, and it's really interesting hearing your perspectives on it. And I was only listening to Porno Graffiti earlier today, so I'm ready and prepared for your next release. Yeah,
it should be a good one. I think it's a criminally underrated album myself. So I've been soon to get the other guys to takes on it tomorrow, so we'll see what comes out of that.
Oh, a little bit of an early. We're getting a Max exclusive here before the actual episode drops. Fantastic.
Yeah, I've shown my hand a bit there, but we'll see. Maybe in 24 hours I'll change it. But there's still a couple of stinkers on that album, so they'll get the treatment. But we'll see how we go on.
Brill, thank you, mate.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone else, for listening and partaking in this journey with me through the Stath's filmography. I'm Jack's Musings, and that's JACS. And you can find me on Twitter, where I am most active. You can also contact the show directly on Twitter under the name Back to the Filmog. Make sure you use the hashtag #FollowTheFilmography. This show has been presented to you by the Pop Gorillas, a collection of hive minds who provide spoiler-free reviews of anything from pop culture in less time than it takes to listen to a song. I'm also a proud member of the Comics in Motion family, as you just heard, a super place full of the world's greatest people, dedicated to bringing you podcasts on a variety of geeky topics. So, please make sure you take the time to search, subscribe, and rate our shows whenever and wherever you listen. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I am Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers. Cut.